these colors just so beautiful? These are all chalks that I have collected and have pretty much never used. And so this month's theme for the Card Hoppin event, which is what this video is a part of, is chalks or pigment powders. And the theme is where I live. So I'm going to make a few cards and give you some clues. I'm going to see if you can guess where I live, the state that I live in. If you can answer in the comments below, that would be awesome. But again, this is for the Card Hoppin event for the month of August. If you're interested in joining the group, I will leave a link below. And don't forget that the next person on the hop will be listed below, as well as the entire hop order. So I am using chalks today. Some of the things I'm going to be using are Q-tips. I'm not using the blending stump, but it is something that you can use. I'm also using a blending kind of pencil type of item, and then a blending brush and these makeup sponges. I'm also going to be using a blending pen as well. And so the first way that I'm going to use the chalks is by doing a resist technique. And so I'm going to ink up this Whimsy Stamps stamp with some VersaFine embossing ink, and then I'm going to set my paper on top of that. And I will be using some white embossing powder, but you can use clear as well. And I honestly had no idea how to use all these chalks. I bought these items because I saw people that I loved using them, and I thought I would use them, and then I actually never did. So I had to do a little bit of research for this video to find some different ways to use these, and then some I just found just by kind of experimenting myself. But I have these Jane Davenport, they look almost like makeup cases, I guess, eyeshadows. And so I'm going to use those first. And I'm using the soft bristle brush, which is what the Jane Davenport pastels come with. And I think these were used for her faces, Jane Davenport's faces, to put the makeup on. But the color wasn't dark enough, so I ended up switching over to a Q-tip and then just dragging that color, or kind of blending in a circular motion the color across the panel. And then I wiped off anything that was sitting on top of the embossed area with a cloth. And that's pretty much going to finish the first card. I added this cute little dog and a sentiment. And if I have the information for the stamp sets, I will go ahead and leave the products I use listed below. But since this video is mainly about techniques for using chalk, I'm not going to show the process of actually assembling the card. And so for this next technique, I am taking some of the VersaFine ink, and I'm going to stamp up this stamp, which is a Creative Expressions stamp called Plant Display. And this is one clue to where I live. So these are cactus, and so where I live there are lots of cactus, especially saguaro cactus. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm taking these Prismacolor, these are called NuPastels, and I am taking my craft knife and I'm just adding some, basically shaving the color off so I get a powder. And I'm going to take the makeup sponge and fold it in half, and I'm just dipping into that powder and pouncing it over that wet VersaFine ink. And because that ink is a little bit sticky and wet, it will hold on to the chalk. I really love this technique because it is so easy and it's so fun to see that image appear when you are bouncing that color over it. And then another way you can use chalks is to wet it down and use it as splatters. So I took the leftover shavings that I had already used to color the image, and I watered them down a little bit, and then I'm just adding a little bit of splatter to the card, and since they are the same colors, the colors match perfectly. And you can also take that same technique and use a more of a solid image, and it is just absolutely gorgeous, and again, so easy to do. So for this one, I'm taking a blending brush, this really bold, beautiful, solid image from Visible Image, and I went over with several colors on this first one, and then I actually took the smaller blending tool, and I'm going to go over the flower again using the same Jane Davenport palette. And again, I just love the way that the image magically appears. And it, again, is so easy. And if you have some really beautiful floral solid images, these are just gorgeous cards to make. And so I'm going to go ahead and blend over that. And then for the next technique, I'm taking some of the gold with my blending tool and adding that really heavy on the top. And then I'm going to take a mixture of half water and half isopropyl alcohol. And I'm basically just doing a color wash. So I'm dragging that color down the card panel. And with a darker color or more of a chalky color, this would be more kind of like a watercolor wash. But I got that idea from the Pastel website, actually, with the mixture of the water and the isopropyl alcohol. For the next technique, I am just taking the Prismacolor chalks and just rubbing it across, just creating, like you could do this with any medium. It's kind of like ink blending, I guess. So I'm creating a sunset because where I live, we have absolutely gorgeous sunsets. And so this is going to be my sunset card. I did spritz that with a little bit of water just to see if it would have an effect, and then wiped it off with a paper towel and created a card for that. This is a really fun technique as well. I am using these Stabilo Carbothello chalk pencils, basically, and these were an investment for me, and I have to say I don't really use them. So this was really fun to get these out and actually use them, and I might actually use them a little bit more now. But I have stamped this up in some VersaFine Black, and I have let it dry overnight just to make sure the ink was totally dry. And I'm going to start out with my Q-tip. So I've added a little bit of color at the base of that flower, and then I'm going to bring that out with the Q-tip, and then I'll add a little bit of darkness for some shadows in that and use my Q-tip again. But then I'm going to switch over and use a Tombow Blending Pen. If you're like me and you have a lot of Tombows, they always, every set you get, if you buy the sets, comes with a blending pen, which is basically just a clear pen. And it worked really perfectly to move the chalk around. And this was such a fun way to color. And this beautiful stamp is from All in Create, and it's called Blossomed Numbers, a really gorgeous stamp. And then for my next technique, I am going to take the chalk stick again, and I am adding some shavings to my craft mat. And then I'm going to take some opaque modeling paste and my craft knife. I'm going to mix that all together, and then I'm going to put this through a stencil. It's really fun to kind of coordinate what colors you want, and so you don't need to buy all the things to get the colors you want. If you look in your supplies and just find stuff that can be mixed like this, it works just perfectly. And so I'm going to add a little bit of that kind of chandrine color to my card panel, and it's going to finish off that card. This is probably one of the funnest cards that I made today. For the next card, I am using some Versamark ink again. This time partially covered with embossing powder. Part of the image I left without an embossing powder. And I'm just taking the colored pencils or the Carbothello pencils and just kind of putting them on the side and rubbing that across my panel just to add a color. And basically I just wanted to see how the color would show up on black. And this would be really gorgeous, especially with that flower image that I just used. But that is it. Those are my cards for today. Don't forget to go ahead and check out the next person in the Hop, as well as all of the others that are participating. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like it or find it informative, please go ahead and give a thumbs up. As always, I thank you for hanging out with me today, and I hope to see you next time.